The question was asked, how did Bill and Helen resolve their conflict? And the answer is, excuse me, number one, the only conflict that I can solve is my conflict. Okay, and as we will read on further, you'll hear that Bill felt that he finally resolved his conflicts with Helen. I don't know if she resolved them with him.
So he resolved his conflict with himself.
Yes, correct. And I'll explain that a little bit more later, but yes. All right, so Bill had some very difficult lessons to deal with Helen, his parents, and I don't know if all you know this, but that he was also gay. And that was a number of years back where it wasn't quite as prevalent, I guess you could say. So he struggled with that as well. So at one point in time, he decided he was going to work on a less difficult relationship, which is probably not a bad idea for any of us to do. If we can't get the big ones, at least try some of the smaller, more subtle ones. And he had a coworker whose name was Art, and Art did not like Helen at all. He told Bill he should fire Helen. She just wasn't worth her. You know, he should get rid of her. And of course, Bill knew he couldn't under the circumstances and absolutely refused to do so. And from that point on, Art would absolutely refuse to look at Bill or talk to Bill. So after a little while, Bill decided he was going to go into this fellow's office every morning, and he knew the guy came in early to read the newspaper, and he would just sit there. And he did this day after day after day after day. And then after about a month, Art, let's see, and there was no response. And then after about a month, Bill said, hi. And Art kind of grunted, but didn't say hi. All right. So this continued to happen again for a long, long time. And then one day, Bill had to come in late because he had some other engagement or whatever. So when he did walk in, Art said, well, where were you? You're not here your regular time. And from that moment on, they started to talk. Okay, so he didn't fight it. He didn't kick. He didn't scream. He didn't try to convince his friend to talk to him. Just showed up in the presence of love. And eventually they were both at a convention and they had overbooked the convention. And so they were asking people that knew each other if they'd be willing to become roommates so that they could build, get everybody in. And the fellow Art walked up to Bill and asked if he would be his roommate. And he said, who else would I want to have as a roommate other than you? So, we can step back and find subtle ways to play the game that will bring forth a very different ending. But as long as I'm fighting it or pushing it or trying to control it, it's probably not going to happen. All right. So throughout the course, we are told in every way possible that attacks must stop and the defenses are not only unnecessary, but counterproductive. And the trick with that is I can intellectually understand that I don't want to attack and I don't want to defend, but myself will continue to do that because that's the kill or be killed modem that the programming is being operated on. So the deal is to keep working on getting out of the way to allow that attack and defenses to calm down and eventually leave. But again, just like what you shared earlier, Anita, when you got very upset and irritated and angry and, we're doing all that stuff, you became aware and then you calmed yourself and then you didn't let that, strangle you because of what you did do in that situation. And that's exactly what we're being asked to observe ourselves without judgment or condemnation, being a crazed person in the world sometimes. And we're, no matter how subdued and quiet and loving and kind a person may be, if they're coming from the ego, sometimes that ugly spew is going to come out and it's just not going to be very pretty. But we're being asked to be coming to a point where I desire not to attack. I desire not to defend myself any longer. We need to put the mute on. Where's mute? Okay. Sorry about that. All right. So for one of this, and I love this, I thought this was such a beautiful description of a moment that the author had with Bill, where Bill totally connected correctly. So for one moment, he suspended all prejudice, judgment, and expectations of me, providing a mirror of unclothed by the ego perceptions and needs. In that clear mirror, he showed me who I really am and opened the door to the way home. And as we return to an innocent perception of each other, the Christ comes forward and reveals the self that is always present. I just thought that was so beautifully said, of the idea of, obviously this person was very consciously aware of the effect on him coming from that blank space of, I don't know, and really looking. And she could feel the difference. And maybe not everybody we do that with will understand it, but they will know somewhere that there is a shift that's going on. And be very aware that if you did not feel guilty, you could not attack, for condemnation is the root of attack. So in other words, if you were at a place where you no longer had any guilt within, there would be no place that you could possibly attack, because you'd be coming from over here. Now, you might still say words. How do I want to word this? In other words, like if your child is playing in the street, you would go out in the street and you would get your child and you would explain to them that that's not the correct thing to do, but there would be no attack or defense going on within the relationship. Because I think a lot of times people think, well, I'll never speak again. And that's not what it means. What it means is when you come from a place over here instead of over here, only love will come through. And what words get expressed will come from that place of love. And it may not sound loving coming out of your mouth if you're evaluating it, but it could be the most loving experience for that other person in that circumstance. All right. So I'm going to read that little description again, because I think it's just so beautiful. So Bill, for one moment, suspended all prejudice, judgment, and expectations of me, providing a mirror unclouded by egoic perceptions and needs. And that clear mirror, he showed me who I really am and opened the door to the way home. As we return to an innocent perception of each other, the Christ comes forward and reveals the self, capital S, that is always present. And be very aware, the way the egoic mind is set up is that somebody else is the problem, so I can be play the part of an innocent victim. And I have to be willing to drop that story that I'm an innocent victim and there's a perpetrator, and come to that alignment with, I want to know who I am. I want to know who my brother is. And you don't have to say all those words, but it's that intent in your mind that that's what you are looking to do. And again, if you didn't have guilt in your mind, you would never be able to attack. All right, whenever you consent to suffer pain, to be deprived, unfairly treated, or in need of anything, you but accuse your brother of attack upon God's Son. And that's what we're doing all the time. And I'm going to read that again because it's so important. Whenever you consent to suffer pain, to be deprived, unfairly treated, or in need of anything, You but accuse your brother of attack upon God's Son. So not only are we harboring a judgment against our brother, we then attack our brother because he's doing what we wrote the script to do. And that's not loving, by the way, in case you wondered.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? When we think we need anything,
Yes.
anytime I think I need something, and therefore someone here is not providing it, I'm attacking.
Yep.
That's so amazing.
Yes, it's very amazing. And again, that's the depth of the addiction of the thought system of the ego. And that's going on, pretty much 24 hours a day, as we all know. And
Yeah,
what
and
this is,
linking it to needs like that, though, for me
yeah, yeah. But think
is
about
because that
it.
yeah,
When you think about it, as soon as we chose for separation and took it seriously, we live in lack. And the only place lack doesn't live is here. So if I'm here, I'm always lacking and I'm always looking in the world to have that lack be filled. When I'm over here, I don't have lack.
yeah,
So
and
yeah.
it's the simplest thing, like, I need friends,
Oh, yeah.
or I need people to be friendly when I go to the grocery store, like innocent little needs that I think are just basic or, common sense are actually an attack.
Yeah,
Like, when
yeah,
I'm really in peace, I would go to the store and it wouldn't matter how anyone was behaving. I wouldn't care. I would have no attachment to
none
what
of
anyone was doing in form if I really was identified with the truth of who I am. That's
absolutely.
just blows me away.
Well, and,
Thank you.
and I think that's why we keep coming back to the class over and over and over to hear the next level of, oh my gosh, and that too? Because, we start out by, I'm having a miserable day, I better ask for help. But when you start to realize, just as you pointed out, if I have any need that I think something or someone else is supposed to feel, it's becoming because I'm experiencing lack. And that's a good piece of information to know, even if I can't live it yet. That's a great awareness. Or if I'm praying
Yes.
that somebody else gets healed, well, I'm saying what should happen. That's not love.
Yes.
This is heavy duty, deep digging shit, excuse the expression, I'll use that word. But yeah, and each time you hear it another way or in another level or another, another piece of that undoing process, it's like, wow, wow, wow. Yes. Okay,
And
Russ.
then I feel so thankful for Ken
Oh, gosh,
because
absolutely.
I see him standing there, like, embodying what it can be like to really understand that I have no needs. I'm already whole. All of us are already whole, and we're just playing this game
Yeah.
of scrambling around trying to grab something that I desperately think is so, vital. Like, and then you just have this example of someone who has woken up and it says, we're just peace. There's another choice. So
Mhm.
I'm really grateful, and for you that you come here and share it with us, and for all of you in the room who I can't see, thank you so much for being here.
Well, glad you popped on the call. All right, Russ, you had, okay, I'd be more than happy to. For one moment, and this is Bill in regard to the person that's writing this, for one moment, he suspended all prejudice, judgment, and expectations of me, providing a mirror of unclouded egoic perceptions and needs. In that clear mirror, he showed me who I really am and opened the door to the way home. as we return to an innocent perception of each other, the Christ comes forward and reveals the self, capital S, that is always present. So in other words, if I'm, which we all do 24 hours a day pretty much, if I walk up to somebody else, I'm not seeing them because I've got the clouds of all the preconceived egoic concepts that that lens that I'm looking through when I look at my brother. And I judge, I attack, whether I physically say anything, isn't that important? It's that's what's coming in my mind. And as this describes it, at that moment, he was able to push away all his beliefs, his, the lack of anything else. And he was able to be in the presence with this person, totally unclouded by anything else in the egoic aspect.
Can't be a politician.
Well, technically you could be anything. Yeah. And, it's real easy to think it couldn't be a politician, but that's not absolutely accurate.
No,
Russ is joking.
I know.
yeah.
I
thank
know.
you. I'm glad you got that.
All right. So I'm going to say that the line that Soul loves so much, and that is, whenever you consent to suffer pain, to be deprived, unfairly treated, or in need of anything, you but accuse your brother of attack upon God's Son, because you are putting your ability to be at peace on somebody else's shoulder. If it wasn't for you, I could be okay. And this course unequivocally is trying to help us understand, if you're not okay, it's because you've chosen this. And you can choose this when you're ready to choose this. But don't put it on them. Even though in the world down here, boy, it sure looks like they're the problem. Or the weather's the problem, or, who knows what it is. There's a problem in the world. And if it wasn't for that problem, I could be at peace. And that's not accurate.
I recently had a problem with my microwave. It happens like every 5 years, so.
Something, right?
Yes, and, I go there, I press the button, nothing's happening, so. Do it again, and then a third time, okay, it's broken, right? So then I go get another microwave. But now I figured out, well, there's no point in getting the brand new one. I'll go to the Russian guys, they'll give me sort of a bash up one. Or one off the back of a truck. It'll be, $80 or whatever. So I got this other one. It too didn't work. And I had seen it work in the store. They showed me it worked. So it wasn't the thing.
Never
It was the
is.
source. It was the cord bringing the power in.
Ah, okay.
Right, but I had an idea about where, this was
Yep.
coming from. But no, it was the cord. So the faulty connection to source. And that's probably how it is.
All the time.
time.
Yep. All the time. Yeah.
All the time.
Very interesting.
Sent it in, one to the Russian guy.
Well, actually, it's pretty nice, but it's just kind of tiny, so I'm gonna take my other one, thank God I kept. It's usually does those kinds of things once a week, but anyway.
Okay. Very.
So I kept it, and I have to decide, I'm gonna try and give it away to somebody, I guess, the little
Yep.
one. But,
Yeah. Somebody may walk up to you and say, boy, my,
right.
who knows?
Yeah, I kind of got it magically.
Yep.
But the other thing is, today I was reading in Letting Go, by David Hawkins, that he says literally every thought we have is from the ego. And when we stop that,
Mhm.
we're on the other side,
Mhm.
automatically.
Absolutely. The course says
And
the
I
same
never even
thing.
thought of that way. I
Yeah.
thought there's right thoughts and there's wrong thoughts.
Mm-mm.
Or there's better thoughts and
No,
there's best thoughts, but
Yep.
it's not really.
not from the perspective of the ego. In fact, the course would even say, you don't really think, you don't really see, you don't really hear, you don't have emotions. That's just the programming of the egoic thought system.
It's like the TV that's on 24/7.
Yep. And as long as we're playing over there, we're gonna miss being over here. Now,
But it's
some,
always there in the back.
it's always there in the background, yeah. But if I focus on the ego, I'm going to experience the effects of the ego. Yeah. Somebody wrote a
And
couple. Go
I
ahead.
love what you said. I love what you said because we want to. Like whenever that is happening, it's because I still want that to be happening. It's
Absolutely.
not just doesn't just happen. I don't know what's going on. The thoughts, like Ken said, they don't come unbidden.
Nope.
I'm choosing to
Yes.
believe that because I want to. That's a hard one too, where I'm like, I'm trying so hard, I want to get this, I want to get this. And it's like, well, you really don't. Because when you really
Mm.
want to, it's easy. You will.
In
And
the
and that's the forgiveness process, is looking at how much I don't want it and then going, okay, let me just look at this until it dissolves, right? The quiet melting in. I can't fight it. I can't go, you're so dumb. Why would you want that? You have to just look at it. I have to look at myself wanting not to have peace,
Yeah.
not to be fulfilled, blame everyone for everything, feel victimized. I have to watch myself want that, and then with Jesus, so that it can just quietly melt back in. Yeah, because that's the only cause. The cause is I want that,
Yep.
right? Like it says, the Course asks you in each and every moment, you must ask yourself, what do you want? Because you are asking yourself that every minute and you're getting the answer, like you just said. If I want the ego, I get the ego until I change my mind.
Yes. And again, part of the learning of the course is to become aware, if that's the effect that I'm having, that was what I wanted. As he said, whenever you consent to suffer pain, blah, 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 blah. And that's exactly what's going on. But we weren't aware that we were in charge of that, because we just thought these things were randomly happening to us. But he's trying to help us recognize, or even in workbook 23, when it has those 3 steps, the first step is to recognize you wanted this. We chose for the separation. We're living in this separation, and now we're realizing maybe living in the separation isn't the best deal. But number 1 is I chose it. So if I chose it, I can re-choose it, which is wonderful news, because before I was an innocent victim of circumstances beyond my control, and there was absolutely no way out. So somebody sent a couple quotes. One is, all attack is self-attack, and it cannot be anything else. Arising from your own decision not to be what you are, it is an attack on your identification. So when you're choosing for this, you literally have attacked not only God, but you've actually attacked God. Attack is thus the way in which your identification is lost. So we've lost our identification, because when you attack, you must have forgiven what you want. Let's see. Because when you attack, you must have forgotten what you are. Okay. Thought I said forgiven, totally different thing. Yes. And, again, even with this whole idea, when it says, whenever you consent to suffer pain, and it sounds like, oh, okay, well, I'll just stop doing that. But we're so addicted to that ego. And we all know, whether you've ever given up smoking or drinking or whatever, or watched somebody else, someone can be hacking out their lungs and tell themselves, I'm not going to have another cigarette, but the addiction to the cigarette overrides it. Well, really, the addiction of the ego overrides oftentimes, though I want it to be over here, this overrides it only because we've given it so much reinforcement. We've said, this is what I want, and I'm sticking with it. And there's that delightful line somewhere in the Course where it says, not only that, but we made a pact with the ego that once we chose for separation, we would never look back. And the course comes along and says, well, let's reconsider that.
Well, the wanting is more, for me anyway, it's more complex than I want to
Right.
want. And for volition, but this goes back to the course, to the selection of the ego's world rather than where I was.
Right, right.
And
And
so wanting
Right.
includes a want that comes from the need to attack or an addiction to attack.
right,
Being hungry, angry, lonely, tired, fearful, vengeful, all of these things are in the want,
sure.
whether I'm aware of it
Right,
or
Yeah.
not. So for one, I say, I am mad at you. I want to be mad.
Mhm.
That might not make sense. No, they did this thing. That's why I'm mad at them.
Sure.
But really, every time we have the choice not to go down that road,
exactly.
if we can see it.
If you could see it at the time, absolutely, yes. Without being aware that this was a setup, we're not going to get to the intricacies to be able to undo what we set up. I'm an innocent victim. You did this, it's your fault. And if you would change, I could be okay. But it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, when I'm driving over to the west side going into Permit today, this car just came, this light was green for our side, there's a big boulevard in between.
Mhm.
Light was red for them. This person comes anyway.
Ah,
And I think a lot of it is, there's something in the universe right now that's kind of seems more active, a little bit more hostility, a little bit more anger, things
Right.
going out sideways for whatever reason. So I guess we can see it. And I just had to take responsibility. Oh, how come I seeing this today? I wasn't, for the first time, I was not blaming the guy
beautiful.
who was driving. There's a reason I put myself in that spot at that moment.
There you go. Not necessarily as you, Zeta, and that's the
No,
thing that
no.
I think we have to be careful that it's not Mary Ann that wants to be an innocent victim. Mary Ann's an innocent victim as a result of the choice that was made that we keep reinforcing by choosing it instead of this every moment.
Right, you see patterns.
Yes,
Part of the pattern is being in a situation
right,
where I say, this person is wrong. So-
yeah.
so that's
And
all it is.
when you make them wrong, it
Then I'm
appears
wrong.
you're right, and then you're both separate because it's one or the other instead of one.
Yeah, and nobody home, so.
All right, so healing was not tied to some special skill, but was the automatic result of releasing grievances, a gift available to every man, woman, and child who chooses a defenseless, forgiving way of relating. So I'm either in the boxing ring or I step back and say, I want another way. And I thought this was really sweet. By the way, for those of you who just got it online, because it wasn't working, we're talking about Bill Thetford because he passed away on the 4th of July. And I've been reading some things from one of a book written by him or about him, I should say. And it's called Never Forget to Laugh by Carol M. Howe. So what Bill said was, we're all angels with amnesia. We are the radiance of our true self, which can never change or be tarnished in any way. We are assured your worth is established by God. Nothing you do or think or wish or make is necessary to establish your worth. I'm going to read that again because it's so important. We think I've got to do something to be worthy. I have to act a certain way. I have to, whatever it is. Our worth is established by God and nobody else. Anything else that we add to that is what we have called ourselves instead of our true identity as God presents it. So we are all angels with amnesia. We are the radiance of our true self, which can never change or be tarnished in any way. We are assured your worth is established by God. Nothing you do or think or wish or make is necessary to establish your worth. Okay, so in regard to, and I mentioned that Bill passed away on the 4th of July, and it was 1988. I have that written over here. The day before he passed, he shared with his sister that he wasn't feeling so good. Or I'm sorry, that he was feeling good. I said, boy, that he was feeling really good and free and very complete. He told her that all his grievances were gone, absolutely gone in his mind, in answer to you. She went through a list of relationships that she knew that Bill had struggled with. He explained to his sister how he had finally released his attachment to each one. She said, "You are free. You have done your homework." He smiled with a big grin and said, "Yes, I have. There is no baggage. I'm cleaned out, in and out. I'm complete in every way." And he was described the night before he passed away as being very light, joyful, as if he was going to lift off. Bill seemed to have cut loose of all anchors. And the next morning, Judith Scutch, who was the person who was very responsible for bringing the course into the physical world, I guess you could say, commented about it being the 4th of July, and he said, "Yes, it's my Independence Day." She asked if he still felt free, and he said, "Yes, it's my Independence Day." He had gone from being restricted, reserved, and inflexible to expansive, flowing, and inclusive. He was willing to strip himself of his persona, psychological armoring, prestige, unhelpful habits, and presumptions. Throughout the process, he danced, laughed, and struggled, joked, despaired, and supported, loved, feared, and prayed, and steadily forgave his way to the end, soaring to a glorious finale worthy of the grandest operas he so adored. The traits he cultivated, the ones that led him home, are well within everyone's reach. A daily, steadfast determination to let all the conflict, the ego's sustenance, the willing to make a peace of mind the primary goal for each encounter. We need to relinquish our defenses, attachments, and valueless investments, though not necessarily our worldly possessions. We cherish our grievances rather than each other, as if they were precious heirlooms, but we can change our minds. And I think the line where it says about, we need to relinquish our defenses, attachments, and valueless investments, though not necessarily our worldly possessions. And I gave an example a while back where there was 2 sadhus in India that the only thing they had was just a mat to meditate on, and one of the monks stepped on the other one's mat, and then they started to rumble. So it's not about the worldly things, it's about the inner things that this course is talking about. There's lots of courses or spiritualities out there where we want to do different things in the world as far as form goes. This is all about content. What is going on within me? Am I cherishing my grievances rather than each other? And how frequently we will fight to the death, as the course specifically states, to defend our position in the world.
So Thetford, did he pass in his sleep or did he?
Nope. Judith was having a 4th of July party, and a whole bunch of people were being invited, and she needed something from the store, and he said, "I'll go get it. I'll go to the store and get it." And he walked down the driveway and he collapsed of a heart attack, and that was it. So this
Well,
is
nice and fast.
nice and fast. But the point is, he didn't just physically die in hopes that he would be redeemed afterwards. He redeemed himself, and then when it was time for him to let his body go. There was no attachment to it. Very different.
Yeah.
And this,
Perfect timing.
this is from workbook 135, paragraph 20. Without defenses, you become a light which heaven gratefully acknowledges to be its own. And it will lead you on in ways appointed for your happiness according to the ancient plan, begun when time was born. Your followers will join their light with yours, and it will be increased until the world is lighted up with joy. And gladly will your brothers lay aside their cumbersome defenses, which availed them nothing and could only terrify. And I'll read that line by line. So without your defenses, you become a light which heaven gratefully acknowledges to be its own. So when we let go of the defenses, you're literally opening up to a whole nother way of knowing who you are and knowing who your brother is. And it will lead you on in its appointed, it will lead you on in ways appointed for your happiness according to the ancient plan begun when time was born. So be very aware that from the perspective of the Course, the Son of God decided it was going to go off on its own. And the moment it decided to go off on its own, an answer was given. The Son of God looked at the answer, and because it already was enmeshed in guilt, sin, and fear, of which when somebody has guilt, sin, and fear in their mind, they project onto anything outside of themselves. So the Son of God projected that onto God. So the Son does not trust God any longer. So instead of going back home where nothing happened, the Son of God was enmeshed in guilt, sin, and fear, couldn't tolerate it. So the way the Son solved the problem was to project into the world the guilt, sin, and fear that he harbors in his mind so that he could play the part of an innocent victim. But the whole while, this never went away. So he just has this false pretense that he's an innocent victim of circumstances beyond his control, waiting for the other person to change, but that will not change it because we need to be the ones that change from the ego mind to the Holy Spirit. And again, that ancient plan was put into place the moment the Son of God took the thought of separation seriously. Your followers will join their light with yours, and it will be increased until the world is lighted up with joy. And as I read that description of Bill coming with totally empty hands, I guess you could say, when he encountered that friend, he then could be the expression of that light because he was empty of all the guilt, sin, and fear. And gladly will your brothers lay aside their cumbersome defenses. So just like Jesus came to show the way, Jesus, wants us to call on him until we finally get this. But his goal is not for you to stay there. His goal is that you stand up and walk with him, become like him. And then you will be the reflection of that light that he has been reflecting. All right, so, and gladly will all your brothers lay aside their cumbersome defenses, which availed them nothing and could only terrify. And again, if we knew that nothing of the world will ever work. Now, Jesus says that throughout the Course in many, many ways, in many places. It's never going to work. Do it, play there all you want, but it's not going to work. It's only when you remember who you are that you will escape from this experience. All right, see if there's anything else we can play with. Oh, here's a response that he had to Judith when he was telling her that he had forgiven everybody. And he put his hands on Judith's shoulders and said, "I'm not holding any grievances." Judith said, "Oh, come on. then asked him about several problematic people from his past. He had a specific